And then at the time, we actually like didn't see any success. We had so many sales calls where we were like, yes, I think we closed that guy. And then he ended up not closing. And then we had 3 people close within 2 days. We both had like this one day of like panic where we're like, now we need to actually do it and not just talk about it. Like,
You, dude, you said you were contacting hundreds of people in your pipeline. I know people that quit after 2 people tell them no.
when you're topping up in a live training with some millionaires gonna give you the secrets, you're like, ooh, this is amazing.
Right.
Until they drop the $2,000 price point on you and you're just like, that's more money than I have in my account right now. So like Iman, Gadzhi was one of the first ones I really followed, and then Sam Ovens. Those were really the first 3 that I've kind of
OGs, huh?
Yeah, the OGs.
Damn, that's good. We'll
have some month where we'll make like money that seems life changing. We're just like, what the f are we doing?
Hey guys, this is Paul Alex with the Level Up Podcast. I have another special guest. His name is Jeremy Moser. Jeremy Moser was a Division I athlete. He went from college to actually building one of the biggest social media agencies that now helps people blow up on Instagram. Yeah, you heard it right. Making millions online on Instagram. I didn't believe it until I tried it. And I brought the man with the plan here. Jeremy, how are you doing today?
Good, brother. Thanks for having me.
How'd you like the intro?
That was awesome.
No. I got to make the intros good because I have so much like respect for you, dude. Like, you know, we worked with each other for like 3.5 years now.
Almost 3 years, yeah.
And like, dude, you've done some amazing stuff to my Instagram. This is coming from somebody that doesn't like taking selfies and shit. And you just, dude, blown me up on Instagram. So on this pod, guys, as you guys know, we talk about like the rags to riches stories, like where you came from. So just give us a little bit of background on you, dude.
Cool. So obviously I'm originally from Switzerland, as the accent might give away. I grew up like very untypically, like, you know, middle class, like maybe even upper middle class, but very like blue collar like upbringing in terms of my dad. He's like just working 16 hours a day, having his own little rags to riches story. My mom's a children's psychologist. And so from a young age, we're like, well, you got to earn everything you get. Otherwise we'll take it away from you. For me, sports was very big growing up. I, you know, never missed anything, but I had like always had to do well because it was like, well, you ain't getting new boots if the old ones are still good to run in, you know, like that whole like, I guess, normal spiel.
Yeah.
But from a young age, I was pretty much told like, hey, look, we're going to go get you good grades. You have to be good in school. That's the foundation of everything. And then you go get a degree and everything. But unlucky for them, I really fell in love with sports. At first, it was like football, which like is soccer here. I played for like one of the top clubs there, but then really shifted all my love into tennis. And from there, I was like, well, I want to be a tennis pro. And so kind of the whole life shifted. And like, as I did school and tennis, it kind of got a bit tough. And so when I was 17, I had to take a really honest look and go, am I going to go pro?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, not going to work. And at the time, someone came and was like, by the way, in the US, there's a thing called college tennis, D1 athletics. I was like, that sounds interesting. And then we saw like, obviously the top schools, like the UGAs, the USCs. And I was like, oh, if I can do this, this is fucking sick. And at that point, I started to go through that recruiting process, ended up getting an offer in Fresno, California. And I was like, nice, I'm going to California. Not knowing I was about to be placed in the middle of the hood.
Yeah, dude. Bulldogs, right? Yeah, I remember that, man. I had an ex that was from Fresno, unfortunately. and I remember going the first time to Fresno, and you know what they say about Fresno in California, dude? It's the armpit of California. So you end up going to college there. You were a Division I tennis player. How was that, dude?
It was unbelievable. I know in this online self-improvement how everyone shits on college.
Yeah.
I loved it. I would give up everything right now to be a freshman again. It was unbelievable. Like I think the nice thing about Fresno was everything was around the community, right? Like USC, UCLA, you don't get that as much because it's like in big cities.
Yeah.
But everyone in there was like in the valley, Fresno State, go Dogs. I love that. I love the fact of like being part of a team, competing for like something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
The education aspect was honestly really easy because we just have such a higher like standard at home. but I really enjoyed it because like they just treated you a bit like above everyone else in terms of like you skip a test, they're like, oh yeah, you can just come make it up in private. Like even from like a socializing and or like maybe even dating aspect, like a lot of people are like, oh, you're from Europe and you're an athlete. Wow, that's amazing.
You're like the elite.
Exactly. So that was I loved it. Had a great time there. Still have some really good friends. Still very tight with my coach. So I loved it.
No, dude, I have the most respect for anybody that goes to college, dude. I did 2 years, and I was just like, this is not for me. And then and then I left. But my two sisters, dude, they became registered nurses, super studious. I think even one of them was just like, hey, you know what? I don't like being a nurse. I'm gonna be a nutritionist. Went back to school for like another 2 years. I was like, what's wrong with you? I was just like, she's like, I don't do it for the money.
Well, I think the interesting part about the college stuff is like I get how like if I was in the US and had to pile on like 200 grand in debt, I probably would feel the same way.
Yeah.
But because for me, like majority was paid, and then like the part that I had to pay was like fairly feasible for like, you know, what do you pay in Switzerland? It was almost a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so for half the old benefits, like if I wanted to play tennis, I would have spent more money because obviously the coaching, the training, and everything was free.
Yeah.
And so I really liked it because it kind of launching into other stuff, it gave me time. But I think if you're with 17, 18, 19 trying to say what direction you're going with your life, I would have gone the completely wrong one. But having time through college and even getting an MBA, that probably saved me to some degree.
No, for sure, man. And the fact that you got to travel to the US, you got to experience a different culture. You met wifey here?
Yes.
That's awesome, dude. You know, it's like I always say, like life's already written for us. It's just we just got to go through the process. So, all right, Division I athlete, you graduated college. What is the next move?
So naturally, like my first 2 years was good at a great time, but I wasn't really making the lineup. So I was like, might transfer, might not. Ended up saying, no, fuck it, I'm gonna figure it out, right? Like kind of the whole, I'm gonna just be better.
What'd your dad say?
And my dad was like fully supportive. He was like, yeah, I want you to see this through. I want you to win, right? And then from there, I was like, I'm gonna figure it out. Play top 3 the following season. 4th year, I was like, if I do well this year, I might go pro. But then that year, I was kind of like, ugh, maybe not. And at the same time, it was like 2018, the whole online entrepreneurship thing started flaming up. And so by the time I was 2019, I graduated, I already had like tried a few side hustles and all of that. And I was like, well, I'm not going to go pro. I don't have to, like, it's too expensive. It's like 100 grand a year that my dad would have to give up. Like going in a job is not what I want to do. And I was like, well, there's a thing called graduate scheme where essentially you coach. So I was able to coach tennis. They pay for my education. And I get to like teach and whatnot, make some money on the side. So it's like, ooh, so I get to play and continue playing. I get to get an MBA in like Silicon Valley. I was like, unbelievable. Like, I'll do that. Because at the time I was like, fuck Europe. Like, I want to live in the US. Like, I was like, I love the US of A. Like, I want to like live here and all that stuff. So,
dude, that's badass. I didn't even know you could do that. So, all right. You're seeing the internet games start blowing up like around 2018, 2019. What was your first perception on it, dude? Like, were you like, oh, dude, this is gold? Like, how did you get into it?
I think I started to look at it from a perspective of, at the time, like my now wife, but she had just like a stipend. I had like my money that I had, and I was like, it's not enough. I need to find some other ways. And so I started looking online, and then at the point, these like theme pages, which funny enough is not what we do, they started popping up, and they were giving like financial advisors were like basically book summaries, and like they were giving like side hustle tips. So I started following that. And I was like, ooh, this is interesting. Like, I need to try some of this stuff out, right? And then I just started like, oh, this is completely new. And because I feel like in Europe, everyone still looks at it as like, this is a scam. But because for me, I was so like Americanized, and I was so like, you know, I was like, I feel like even strongly about politics, even though I don't know if anything, it doesn't affect me. But it's like, I was like, oh, I actually I want to give this a try. Like, I can make this happen.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like very positively minded. Because I think also it wasn't very widespread at the time.
Yeah.
And so when you're topping up on a live training with some millionaires going to give you the secrets, you're like, ooh, this is amazing.
Right.
Until they drop the $2,000 price point on you, and you're just like, that's more money than I have in my account right now. So,
dude, who was the first consultant or influencer online that you actually really like honed in on, and you were like, wow?
There were 3 people. There was one. I was like, I think it was Chavez. I think that guy actually might have died from his.
I remember Chavez.
Yep.
Yeah, he did.
Ecom Chavez.
He did ecom. He was out of Vegas.
Yes.
And yes, I mean,
that was some pretty dodgy stuff.
Yeah, it was some crazy stuff.
Him, the typical like Iman Gadzhi was one of the first ones I really followed, and then Sam Ovens. Those were really the first 3 that I've kind of
OGs, huh?
Yeah, the OGs.
Damn, that's good. That's good. And let's go back to like when you said theme pages, just because like a lot of the people that listen to this, man, they were like me before social media. So like, yeah, and guys, if you don't know my story, it's just like I jumped back on social media like in 2020, and before that I wasn't on social media for like 8 years. When I used to go on dates, girls used to be like, you're weird, are you a killer, like why don't you have a Instagram? I'm like, because like I'm old school, you know. But we're here now, right? I got like a following and stuff, which is pretty badass, you know. It helps in business. But to go back to that, break down what a theme page is. That way, you know, the listeners and the viewers, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
So essentially, theme pages are like micro influencers. So essentially, you think of like Kylie Jenner, Kim Kardashian, like Cristiano Ronaldo. They're all like influencers with like a personality. Theme pages, they're like faceless. So for example, some page might call themselves entrepreneurship facts, right? They might call themselves at wealth, right? Whatever the username is, like make money with websites. And they don't show their face, but they just post like themed posts. So that could be a tweet, that could be like a graphic, that could be like an illusion, like whatever it is, like an animation. And they just post faces stuff. And it's usually centered around like one bigger or like smaller topic, such as like finance, making money, right? It could be around like food, nutrition, like whatever it is. So I started to see a lot of those. And it was really like at that time when the whole business and finance theme page niche really started to like kind of pop up, because Instagram as a platform was blowing up. And really that segment of, I guess, making money online started to become a thing.
Yeah, dude, because I remember like MySpace, where I made it myself. But MySpace, dude, there was none of this shit. There was nothing about like, hey, make money with like this course, or like, you know, like you had this multimillionaires like pitching like their idea or like getting you into business. It was fascinating, dude. You know, first book I read was Digital Millionaire by Dan Henry, completely changed my life. And then all the series of Russell Brunson's books, right? The foundation of digital marketing. So, all right, cool, dude. So you found into theme pages, you started going into it. How long until from the time that you actually discovered theme pages to actually taking action?
Honestly, I think I discovered it, and like after like a month and a half, I started to see the first people that post like, hey, you can make money with a theme page. That was like I think end of 2018, beginning of 2019. So I was like, well, I'm doing this. So I started a bunch of theme pages. I failed miserably, like 8 of them. But my issue was I would always like jump around. So be like, oh, I think this name is bad. I'll need a new one, new page. Oh, I think I'm about to go wrong followers, new page. So I'd bounce around. By 2019 summer, I was like, kind of seeing some page like that it grew a little bit. Went home over summer, left my US phone in the US and couldn't log into the account anymore. So I lost that one.
No way. That sucks, dude.
And so when I came back, I was like, okay, cool. I want to give this theme page thing another go. But I want to, at the same time, I was like, a social media marketing agency. And that's really kind of when it didn't happen for another year or so, anything happened. But that was like where I was kind of like, I'm going to use this theme page thing or this social media marketing thing to make money so that by the time I graduate with my MBA, I don't need a job.
Smart move, dude. A lot of people don't think like that. They wait until the very end when they graduate, and then they're like, okay, let me go find a job.
Well, I felt that like naturally, like my mom was very like, she still hates what I do. Like she's like, you could work at Deloitte and make $6,000 a month. Like, you know, whereas my dad was an entrepreneur, so that's where I kind of got it from. But I was always like, okay, my worst case scenario is making 150 grand a year.
Yeah.
So like for me, it wasn't really like, hey, I'm a go bust or like whatever. It was like my worst case scenario is like I get an MBA, I make 150 grand entry salary or more, right? And so and in the worst case, I just fail and then take a lower salary.
Facts.
So it makes it a lot easier, right? Because there's not as much pressure. My dad was financially very stable and you know did really well for himself. My mom is like one higher regarded like psychologist at home. So like I didn't have that pressure of like my parents need me and like we're about to go broke type stuff. So I was just like I want to do well and help them, which obviously gave me more flexibility, I guess.
So your mom didn't like, or she didn't approve of what you were doing or what you're still doing. Hey man, keep it real. And your dad's like, yeah, go my route, right? So here's the thing. When did it actually start blowing up for you, dude? Like, when was that aha moment where you're like, dude, I think we found something?
I know that I feel really bad when people ask about it was COVID. Not from a perspective like I was happy it happened, but like really impacted my life positively. Because at the time I was like trying to do something, but I wasn't really doing anything.
You weren't all in.
I wasn't all in, and I wasn't really seeing impact because I didn't really have the skill, right? I wasn't just that skilled. But then I was working. I was basically waking up at 5. From 6 to 8, I would do conditioning with the guys. 8 to 10 was admin work. 10 to 2 on the court. 2 to 3 lunch. 3 to 5 practice, and then 5 to 8 like school, right? So like I was pretty much like 24/7 on it, and like it was just like I was not in a good position in life at that point. And so when COVID hit, my parents panicked. They were like, "We booked your flight home. You come back to us." And I was like, "Well, this is great because now I actually can't make money, and so I got a stipend to pay for like all my food. I get to live at home for free, and I can't leave the house, so I can go all in this internet thing." So I bought a bunch of like courses, and like you know at that point there was more courses and more stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I think it was at that point when I started to do what's called Instagram shoutouts. for the theme pages, and started to see a little bit of impact, and through that actually bought ads from my now business partner of 4 years, right? Who's running the agency with me and who's an integral part of why we're being able to do some cool stuff. And then by him sort of helping me, I was able to actually take one of the theme pages to like 50,000 followers and made like my first $1,000. I was like, big boy over here, like $1,000 a month,
Dude, that's great. Most people are like $1,000 off of a digital product. Like, some people can't process that.
It was a lot to me. It seemed like so much.
Yeah.
Like we had the other week, we had a client that paid us $132,000 for like a single month worth of work, and me and my business partner were both saying, really prefer when we had that like 1K a month client side, because it felt like a bigger deal at the time, right? Obviously, not to disregard the fact it's fucking crazy someone pays you that much, but
the journey.
Yeah, it's the journey.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I think probably latter stages of 2020, like June, July, I was like, hey, hold up. I like this marketing agency stuff. I've bought like 2-3 courses, but I haven't really done anything. But I see that all these guys that sell courses, they only do YouTube or Facebook ads. Whereas on Instagram, it feels more organic, right? It feels more interesting, and people probably will buy. Like, I definitely think what I've done with the theme pages, I can replicate for like personal brands. So at the time, solo, I just started like reaching out to people. I actually managed, like, I was like, oh, I'm actually not bad at this like marketing sales thing just to sell the service. Closed 2 deals, and then made the classic mistake of like, I literally just copied someone else that was already doing it.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh, I'm just taking inspiration, right? Well, it's pretty bad. Ended up losing those clients.
Oh, wow.
And then re-signed someone. And at that point, I was buying ads from my now business partner. And I was like, hey, I know you run ads for these guys and you seem to be doing really good. Like, can you help me and we'll split 50-50? And he's like, yeah, sure, why not? And then through that, we both realized that like, it was kind of like the yin and yang, right? In terms of, he's really fucking good at like copywriting, like content creation, like understanding what goes viral and all that stuff. And I was really good at like talking to people, selling, marketing, and kind of making sense of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And so, it was probably like October, like pretty much over 4 years ago. We were like, hey, let's actually run this as a legit business. And he was making good money already with like his theme page. He was like, okay, cool. Well, if we find 2 or 3 clients, let's run this up as a full-time thing.
Yeah. And that's exactly how it happened.
Yep.
That's awesome. So Jeremy, let's go back to the initial clients. Like how would you get them as a client, dude? Because the people watching right now, they're probably like, dude, I want to start a social media like agency. Like, that sounds badass, but it's not as simple as it sounds.
Nope.
So walk us through the process, dude. Like, what is it that you did? What did you try? What was your approach?
So at first, I kept it super simple. I would literally just find a course, and I would be like, I'll just take that exact script, right, and just like harass it. But that didn't work. And then I realized that, like, for me, it felt cringy, which I think is a bit more the European side coming through. And so what I did was like, well, I probably like, I compared a lot like sales to dating. And I was like, well, I was probably never the person that would just go out and like spit a bunch of stuff and then like you'd get back. But I would be good with like building relationships, right? Like that's kind of how I got together with my now wife. And so I was like, okay, I'll use the same approach. So I'd hit those people up, not in terms of, hey, buy my shit, but I'd be like, dude, I love those posts. You should probably do this and this. Or like, hey, have you ever thought about doing X? I think you can make so much more money. And so it became more like a value-driven approach.
Yeah.
We have one person that we have both in common, Bastian Slot. He's one of our first ever clients. And I followed up with him and built that relationship for 9 months.
Yeah.
Starting June 2020 until Jan 2021, I think. And that point we signed him.
Yeah.
So it was one of those, like, I built the relationship and I would just send 30 new messages every day and then follow up with 10. So I'd basically like reached out to like 300 people and just try to build a relationship. Because they're like, worst case, someone who's a millionaire thinks I'm cool and wants to chat to me, right? And so that really built sort of everything else that kind of spiraled through. And then obviously sometimes we had the leverage of like, I had a small page, my business partner has a page with like over 2 million followers. And so we would be able to have some form of social proof, like, hey, we've been able to get this done, right? Like the smallest proof of social proof, like, hey, we've done this that the client hadn't done. You should let us help you with X because I think we can do Y.
Yeah.
It was that paired with just being super transparent.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't say guaranteed or you don't pay. It was like, look, this is our hypothesis. We'll do our very best to do it for you, and I'm very confident we can do it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Dude, I love how you break it down because a lot of people, they will go ahead, and what I've noticed, especially with these brand new entrepreneurs coming into the space nowadays, and this is not to talk shit, guys. It's just we're business owners. We know what it takes to go ahead and be resilient, to actually put in the work, do the boring work, what, a lot of people say nowadays. But with you, dude, you said you were contacting hundreds of people in your pipeline, in your sales pipeline. And then you were sending 30 messages a day. I know people that quit after 2 people tell them no. So let's talk about that mindset, man. Where did you have that mindset from being a Division I athlete? Like, where did you get that mindset, dude?
It's the athlete's mindset. I think one is it come from my dad. Like my dad's like, he's not one of my best friends, but like he's like a really big inspiration to me because he's not very smart in terms of like, you know, bro's in 2024 and he's still like collecting all the bills manually. Like he's manually like sticking together all his like receipts to do accounting, right?
Dude, all parents do that.
But essentially, like I just saw him that he literally just got to where he is from like not having a high school degree, like working like dead end jobs to like, you know, building a sizable business of just basically working. So he would basically just go out, 4 a.m., wake up, start work at like 5, 6, work till like 8, come back, like eat dinner with my mom and I, go to sleep, repeat the next day. Yeah. And he just did that for like 40 plus years. And so to me, I was like, okay, cool. I can do anything if I just put in the work. And at the time, I do have to say it made it easier because I didn't have anything to do because obviously we were stuck in our homes.
COVID.
It was great.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Like,
I was like sick. So essentially I get to work out like in a little house, do a bunch of work and not deal with any bullshit. This is awesome.
Yeah. So that's a good point to bring up, dude. Now in a world where, I mean, everybody's free, dude. Like COVID's not hit. Are you saying it is a lot harder now because people have distractions? Or what's your take? What would be some good advice to, let's say somebody, let's think about Jeremy, just COVID just happened. Talk to that Jeremy and then just guide him, dude. But like, be like, all right, you need to sit down. You need to focus. Like, what would be some words of encouragement?
You got to have a North Star. I think everything becomes easier when you have a North Star that you can optimize towards. If I want to make 10 grand a month, right? But I'm just like, I just want to make 10 grand a month so I can go pop bottles and live, right? Like if that's the goal, or I can wear a bust down Rolex and like basically flex on people, that's not really like a North Star, right? Obviously we speak a lot of this in your content. It was like the retiring parents angle. It was that type of stuff. For me, it was like that I want to achieve something and like prove my mom wrong or prove my dad, you know, right, that like I can do this thing. And so I think for me, that was really the North Star that kind of pushed me. And I just realized like it was an either or. Either I was going to figure this thing out or I was going to go in corporate. I also knew that in Switzerland, I would have a harder time getting a job because they don't really accept US degrees. And my wife, she's from England. I was like, well, that's going to be really tough, right? So the why was really strong. Yeah. And that's really what it started for me with. And from there, it was just like, I think just being real with yourself. Understand that like it's going to suck. It's going to take work. It's going to not be easy. But by doing the things that you have to do on a day-to-day basis, right, and doing it well and doing it as good as you can, that's when you can max out like that stuff, right? Our entire agency isn't built on like, you know, I sit here and like I guess I'm a bit of the face of the brand, right? But behind me there's, you know, 3 or 4 full-time copywriters that we have. There's my business partner that's doing like 14-hour days still, right? There's, you know, there's an entire team behind it. So it's like understanding that like it's not as easy as it looks and that it's gonna take shit, but you gotta actually go and do the work at first. I think that's the biggest thing. Like understanding that there's work involved, and once you break it down what the work is, you do it. If I knew that, hey, out of 1,000 people, I can close 1 deal, I was like, okay, cool. If I want to close a guy in 1 month, right? Because I knew for me, I was on the clock. My business partner, he was racking in like his 100 grand a year with like his Steam page. I didn't have shit going. So I was like, okay, for me to get that guy interested and hopefully like use his page, right? Which really what it was. I was like, I need to fucking find clients. So I was like, okay, if I reach out to 1,000 people, if I want to close 1 that I just suck, then I probably should go work a job.
Yeah. Well, your partner, he gave you the milestone. He said 2 to 3. Go find 2 to 3 and we'll make it happen. Yeah. And that was your goal. So you had that direction. You had that vision.
So the funny part was like, it wasn't like a, hey, get this done or like we won't work together. Like obviously not, but it was like, look, that's kind of what's needed, right? To make sense for him, to be quite frank. And then at the time, I was like, okay, cool. And we actually like didn't see any success. We had so many sales calls where we were like at 12, 1 a.m. because obviously we were like 8, 9 hours ahead. We're like, yes, I think we closed that guy. And then he ended up not closing. And then we had 3 people close within 2 days. I think it was 3 within 2 or like 4 within 3 days, something like that. Yeah. And we both were just sitting there and be like, oh shit. Like we both had like this one day of like panic where we're like, now we need to actually do it and not just talk about it. Like this is kind of scary, you know? And then it was just like, well, in the worst case we fail and we just refunded the money. What else could go wrong? Yeah. That was it.
No, it's true, man. And I like that mindset because, you know, I've had business partners before, but I always tell people, dude, like with business partners, it typically doesn't work unless you have one person who has a specific skill, and then you have either one person who has a network that you don't have. And that's what makes a great partnership, right? It's just like you have to have a specialty, essentially, right? It's like in a team, right? You have to be you have to be special on one specific thing. Like me, I'm more of a visionary guy. But if you ask me, like, hey, Paul, what is your cost per lead right now? I'd be like, I don't know. Let me call my guy, right? That's just what it is. I hire smarter people than me to go ahead and handle the numbers and all that
But
jazz.
I think that's what it comes down to, right? I personally think that having a business with a business partner is one of the best things ever. Like, I wouldn't have it any other way. To me, it's more like having good partners, right? Like, to a degree, I always say, like, we're kind of partners in terms of, like, we'll handle that side of it and we approach it with such, right? And then in return, you get to focus on the sales side, right? I think it's having good people around you is massive advantage.
Dude, it's energy. It's energy. It's good people. It's, dude, I was just talking to one of my mentees earlier today. You probably heard me in my office, but I was just like, dude, I was so pumped for him because he was just like, yeah, dude, you know, I'm invested with you guys because I want to be around high performers. And oh, dude, you're about to be extroverted. You know? He's like, I'm super introverted, bro. Like I used to, like you don't understand. Like I went to go get a corporate job just to come out of my shell. I was like, oh, dude, we're about to change the game next week when you come. But to go back to that, man, let's talk about, okay, what is it right now that you offer clients? Because I know you got a couple things going on, dude. So what is it that you offer clients right now?
Yeah, so right now we offer really one thing, which is like sort of like Instagram growth and monetization, which is like for personal brand, which are like the coaches, consultants, course sellers. And what we do is super simple. One, we kind of come in, right? And we essentially set up your branding blueprint, which is kind of like, what's your story? What are your opinions? What are your beliefs? We set that up for you because that's a foundation. Without that, you just build a house on quicksand, right? And then from there, we essentially create content, which are like reels, right? Which are like storytelling, opinion-based, maybe some tactical stuff. Threads, which are like those carousels, right? And then what we do from there is we look at like which content piece performs best, which one doesn't. And then from there, we turn that into what we call a shout out, which means we pay those theme pages to essentially promote the best performing piece of content. Now, I don't really advise that to anyone starting out to do that. We work with people that make at least like 100 grand plus a month, preferably like 200, which is kind of where you were at when we started working together, right? Like we kind of took that as our North Star. Because at that point you can afford us. We're pretty fucking expensive.
Yeah,
and you have enough money to where you're not going to be like a leech in terms of like I need to be a millionaire today or it's going to suck.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do primarily, and we really kind of take this whole internet has this angle of like a growth partner. We really have that in terms of we ain't trying to have a client go micromanage us. Like we go out and we figure shit out. We're trying to just bring you a fuck ton of leads and then hammer you and your business on like, hey, convert those leads, right? So that's kind of how we make our money. We're like 8 to 10 people at any given point, with the goal really like making money through rev shares.
Yeah.
And on the second side, for people who don't qualify for the agency, we've now are building out a consulting division where it's more like, hey, we'll give you our proven content structure, right? We'll show you how to build up your brand, how to create content, and ultimately convert leads. This is not really the case study where we've had 4 people that we've taken from 0 to like $1 million a month.
Yeah.
We haven't, that's not what you learned there, but it's kind of like how you can make an extra 50, maybe even 100 grand a month, right? If you already have a proven offer. So that's really in a nutshell what we kind of do right now.
Dude, and I love your guys' concept. I love your guys' agency. And the reason why is because I call it a boutique agency. It's very boutique because, see, one thing you guys have to understand with Jeremy and his agency, right? The reason why these guys are highly successful is because they go ahead and they really analyze your background. They analyze your background. They analyze your success, where you came from, and then it's like a movie. I feel like you guys are the producers of Instagram. No, I'm serious because I didn't have a following. You know, I was using Facebook, and I was able to generate off of my first digital program like about a quarter mil using Facebook groups, you know, online communities. And then when I came to Instagram, it just put everything on steroids for me, right? And I'm a normal guy. I'm no one special, guys. So imagine if you have like a remarkable story, you're a multi-millionaire right now, and you're already generating around $200,000 in, you know, webinars or paid ads. I'm telling you, these are the guys you guys need to go ahead and work with because they'll blow you up, especially if you're looking to like go ahead and scale not only your following,
no, but the business.
But the business.
I like, we used to just be so obsessed about like the followers, but like to me, I'm just more like a numbers person where it's like, I want to scale the shit out of companies. Like I want to come in and be like, hey, let's do this, this, and this, and let's scale this shit up to like $1 million a month, 500 grand, which I know are like crazy numbers, but like to us, that's kind of what we've accustomed ourselves to, right? like, you know this, obviously, we'll have some month where we'll make like money that seems life-changing. We're just like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah.
You know?
No, absolutely, man. And dude, I'm surprised at this stage of the game right now. Well, I'm pretty sure it's coming. You guys are not trying to target like Coca-Cola or like those massive brands yet.
We thought about it, but I think it's at that point it becomes a lot more difficult because I think one, getting in with them is a lot harder, which means the acquisition cost and time horizon extends. But at the same time, I think working with those brands isn't as fun because there are regulations of what you can and can't say. I think it's harder to create a brand for Coca-Cola because the corporate brand's already so big. Right. We like the people who aren't massive yet. It's easier, to me at least, if somebody's winning small, it's easier to make them win even bigger as opposed to like a massive winner and like, you know, trying to help them do something that they don't even want to do. Yeah. If we take, for example, let's say you go and take Andy Elliott and you're like, hey, Andy, we're actually going to do this type of content. It's probably not going to work out as well as it did for you, for example, because it's like there's going to be some resistance, right? So we like the niche guys who aren't like ultra massive yet, who really want to make a name for themselves because it's easier to plug and play our process and to make sure that like the client kind of uses the right process and like approach when it comes to branding.
Build their story up, build the direction that they're going before they're like a massive name. Andy's getting up there right now. He's trying to go towards one of his mentors, that Tony Robbins. You know, he's trying to get to that level, which I can see it going, dude. It's going to be massive, you know?
I mean, when you look at the biggest personal brands, right? Iman Gadzhi, Alex Hormozi, Andy Elliott, all they base their personal brand around is not the niche authority. It's the story, right? People buy from Iman and SMMA course because they love the story of the single mom. Right. People give Hormozi a percentage of their equity because they see that he's made it from like all the way to the bottom to the top. People love Andy Elliott, for example, because they've seen like, wow, he's that guy. He's lived the life that I'm living through right now. Yeah. Same with you. People love you because they're like, oh, Paul, like he's relatable. He's like true American. Like, you know, he has all those touch points. And so by building your brand on the story effect, you're actually able to get people in. So that now, for example, Iman, he's able to talk about his sunglasses and people love it. Hormozi talks about what cereals he eats for breakfast and people love it, right? You're seeing some similar effects. And so that's really what our philosophy is. So if somebody comes in, he's like, well, I'm the ultimate gardener and I have all the gardening supplements. Like, it's hard to make that work.
That's awesome, dude. I love that. I love that. So, Jeremy, right now, for everybody that is trying to get into the online space, let's say they have a niche, let's say they have a good story, dude. What would you tell them? Okay. What would be 3 tips to go ahead and grow their Instagram right now?
First thing is posting every single day. The number one thing that I see is a twofold. If you don't post, you can't build momentum up for your account, which means if you post 30 times and you get 1,000 views, you have 30,000 views, right? And if you then just get, or if every piece gets 1% more views, you'll compound that thing really fast. At the same time, it's a skill level compounding. The more you post, the better you get, right? This is the first thing. The second thing is research. Just like with anything, the more research you do, the better clarity you have. You know, I kind of compare it as like if somebody just gets you into a room and it's just kind of like, hey, you're blindfolded, just try to shoot the target, and you're just like rolling around shooting. That's hard. But when they're like, hey, the target's likely going to be Miami downtown, like and you sit there with a sniper rifle, it's easier to do it. So from a research perspective, it's like you want to know exactly who's your ICP, who are you trying to target, what is it that you like, your opinions, your views, you know, your kind of story, so that when you see a piece of content, you're like, ooh, this is good. I can add a twist to that. I can replicate that, right? And so now you have higher chance of success because you do the research. I think the third thing is just extending your time horizon. People think that they should post 5-7 times and go viral, as opposed to just playing it as a long run. Or people try to get 10,000 views and make $10,000, as opposed to making, you know, consistent money and making. One of our clients, he literally told us, I'm not trying to make $1 million today. I'm trying to make $1 million a year or 2 years from now, and make it consistently. Yeah, that's kind of the 3 things I would say.
And that's smart, man. The long game, you know. And we have these conversations all the time off camera, but we always talk about the long-term effect, right? Yep. Like, I'm here to do good business with good people for the long-term effect. I'm not here for just a year, 6 months, or whatever, dude. Like, a lot of people don't understand that. So when people are out there hard pitching people, like doing call to actions, being like, buy my shit, right? It's just like people get burnt out, dude.
100%.
Especially now in 2024, dude. I mean, 2020 was like it was
2020,
the gold rush.
you could sell anything.
Yeah, it was insane, dude. So, Jeremy, where can my audience go ahead and find you, dude?
Really 2 channels, Instagram @JeremyNickM, or on Twitter, which I think is Jeremy Nick Moser. Those are 2 platforms I'm most active on.
And then anything for anyone trying to start their own social media agency or looking to actually start their entrepreneurship journey in social media?
I'd say if you're trying to become an entrepreneur, you want to do two things. One, you really want to research and kind of look at the different models. There's dozens of models out there. They all work if you do. And so from my perspective, I look at it like, find something that actually you enjoy. Like if somebody tells me in 5 years you'll be creating content, I like that. I'll be marketing in 4 years, 5 years. You need to have something you actually enjoy, not just do it because it can make money. The second thing is if you run a marketing agency, whatever business model you pick, go on YouTube and actually just consume. But from perspective of like, don't just find someone you're like, oh, that guy's rich, I'll learn from him. But find someone you like. I think it was Hormozi said, if you don't like their life, don't take their advice. And that is one of the best pieces of advice I've ever seen, because I too fell into a trap of like listening to someone whose life I didn't want.
Yeah.
You can be rich and miserable, right? Or you can be also poor and happy.
Yep.
A bit harder to understand, but like you just want to do something you actually enjoy. So for me, it's like find someone that you genuinely like from like their lifestyle, their philosophy, their life choices, and then from there you start listening to them. You know, you go through a course and then you get some first quick wins to see that one, I'm doing the work.
Yeah.
I'm actually showing up. I'm not just procrastinating and like, you know, mental masturbation, watching videos. And then when you see impact, you buy into a course, you buy into a mentor, and then you just execute what they tell you to do.
Oh, dude, I love that. I love that. And there you guys have it. Jeremy Moser, killing the game right now in social media, specifically Instagram, guys. So if you're a content creator, if you're an influencer, you got a great story, you want to do a build up, you possibly want to work with Jeremy, well, there you go. You got his contact information. Make sure to shoot him a follow. Make sure to go ahead and message him. Make sure that you tell him that you actually watched this episode, and then that way he can give me some referrals. So with that being said, guys, my name is Paul Alex. This is the Level Up Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're blowing that up right now. Emilio, how many subscribers? A little bit. Yeah, a little bit over 1,000. We just really started going ham on it like 2 weeks ago, so I think that's pretty good. I think, but we'll see. We'll see. Nah, it's gonna blow up. Trust me. And then if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to go ahead and leave a review, guys. We are top 10 business podcasts right now in the United States. Yes, that is right, in the United States. So catch you on the next one. Let's level up.